Hi there, homespinner friends. It is Sherry, and it is wonderful to see you today. I hope this video finds you all doing well. I had every intention of popping on and doing a short video yesterday to wish you all a happy Mother's Day, but that did not materialize. I started extra early yesterday morning. I had to be at the church early for a Mother's Day event that we had, and then the day just kept steamrolling. You know how it goes. And by the time I got home late yesterday afternoon, I was pretty much worn out. And I thought, you know what? My friends will understand if I save my greeting for tomorrow. So I hope you had a happy Mother's Day. I love and appreciate you all and all you do for your families, for your children and grandchildren. Some of you may say, well, you know, I'm not a mom, but perhaps you are a mother figure. I know so many women in my life that have been like mother figures because they didn't maybe have their own children. They were able to devote even more time to children around their community and within their church. And that was so special and really a gift from God that they could do that. So whether you are a mom or a mom-like figure, we love and appreciate you. Now, this weekend was special for us for more reasons than just Mother's Day. My husband and I celebrated our 39th wedding anniversary. My husband and I were married on Mother's Day Sunday in 1984, and Mother's Day doesn't always fall on the actual date of our wedding anniversary. This year, the 13th happened to fall on a Saturday, and so we celebrated Saturday and Sunday, but we really didn't get to do too many special things for our anniversary because of just time constraints around our scheduling. So we have a restaurant where we love to go. It's out of town. It's a real pretty place. It has a stream that runs outside of it. It's just beautiful. And so we are planning to go there one day soon, maybe in the next week or two. We will get to escape up there and have a wonderful meal together, and that will be our anniversary celebration. But this weekend, we sort of devoted our time to celebrating the moms in our lives. And so Saturday, we went up to see my husband's mom, and his sister and brother were there, and others in the family. And then yesterday, we had church, and my parents were able to be there with us. And then my daughters were able to come and surprise us. Now, they live in the same town where my husband and I live, but they go to two different churches. And so one daughter goes to one church here in town, and one goes to another church in town. And then my husband and I, you know, my husband is a pastor of a church in a neighboring town. So we're just sort of spread out like that a little bit when it comes to going to church, and that's just fine with me. I told my children early on, as long as you go to church, as long as you worship the Lord, I don't mind where you go. As long as they're preaching the word, then you should go there with your family and do what God's leading you to do in your life. And so that's what they do. But on special occasions like Easter and Mother's Day, they will surprise me with a visit, and it's always wonderful to see them come in with the grandkids. Now, our other two children are boys. You know, I did the recent video about our oldest son, and I just want to pause here and thank each one of you for the kind and sweet words that you said in your messages. Some of you wrote emails. Thank you so much for that. You just don't know how that touched our hearts to know you're thinking of us and praying for us and praying for our son, because we believe in the power of prayer. We've seen prayer work, and we've seen miracles happen in our own lives and in other people's lives, and we know we should never give up. As long as there's life, there's hope. That's what my mom always said, and I believe that to be true. So I did not hear from that son yesterday, and that's the second Mother's Day I haven't heard from him. But that's okay, because you know what? God is in control. God is in control, and I've turned all that over to him. And so I wasn't even really sad yesterday. I just thought about my son. I prayed that he was all right. I prayed that maybe somehow his mom was on his mind yesterday, and that he would remember the many things that I've taught him over the years about his faith and about how he should conduct himself, and that maybe somewhere in the recesses of his mind, he would be convicted to make a change. And then our other son, I did hear from him. He called yesterday afternoon, and once I got home, and we had a great chat together and laughed about some old times that we had shared together, and it was a wonderful conversation. And so I was very thankful to have a good weekend. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did have an incident in our family. My dad had been having a week where he did not feel exactly right, and he was having, he felt like a lot of pressure in his ears, and he thought he might be getting an ear infection. He just wasn't sure. And so that Friday of that week, my dad took a fall. He actually stumbled a couple times and then actually fell in the yard. And that's unlike my dad. My dad, even though he'll be 79 in August, he is very strong and plays golf 18 holes a couple times a week, and he's just always, been a go-getter. And so for him to fall was sort of unusual. And so I rushed over. My parents live about less than 10 miles from my house. And so I ran over there to check on how Daddy was doing. And he was inside and he seemed okay. And my husband came from his work, and we sat and talked for a couple hours with Dad and Mom and had a wonderful visit. And Dad seemed okay, but I could tell he just wasn't feeling exactly right. And so I called to check on him on Saturday, and he was doing pretty good on Saturday, felt about the same. And then on Sunday, my mom called me as I was getting ready for church. And she said, honey, I don't think we're going to be at church this morning. We were in here getting dressed, and Daddy just doesn't feel good. And I really think what I need to do is I just need to take him into the hospital and let them check on him in the ER, because he is just not, something is just not quite right. He's just having a lot of headaches and things. And I said, well, Mom, just let me drop what I'm doing and come down there. I can either take you or meet you at the hospital. She insisted that I go to church. We were having a big special day at church where we were calling a new staff member. And so she said, you go to church, and if anything changes or we find out anything, I will just send you a text from the hospital. And I said, well, be sure that you do, because I want to keep up with what's going on. And of course, I went through church. She texted me a couple times during the service, and I glanced down and I could see she had said that they didn't know anything yet. And then as I was driving home, I called her and told her, look, Mom, I'm going to come to the hospital. And she said, do not come. The doctor's about to walk in. And then she called me back a little bit afterwards, right as I was getting ready to pull into my driveway. And she said, they have found that Dad has bleeding on the brain. And I was so surprised by it. I was like, well, how? And she said, well, we didn't get to ask a lot of questions because the doctor stepped out into the hall to take an important call. But she did say that they were calling a neurosurgeon. And I said, Mom, did they say a neurologist or neurosurgeon? And she said, no, they said neurosurgeon. And then I knew that there was probably something going to have to be done about this bleeding on the brain right then. And so I ran in and freshened up really quick, from being at church. And then my mom immediately called me back and she said, come right now, because they're getting ready to do emergency surgery for your dad. And so I rushed down. My brother was already there. My husband came en route. He was at a meeting after church, and he had left that meeting and come down so we could all be there together. And we were able to pray with Dad before he had this procedure done. The neurosurgeon said they weren't really sure exactly what happened, except that my dad does take some medication that might have impacted this. And he also could have maybe hit his head or had something else happen that he doesn't remember that kind of jump-started it. But they could tell that the blood that was there was both old blood and new. And so they needed to get that out right away. And of course, it was a tedious procedure. We weren't really, comfortable, we weren't really sure how it is when you're having emergency surgery. That's something that's so shocking. You're just very nervous about it. You're nervous anyway, no matter what kind of surgery is going on. But we stayed together as a family, and then pretty soon the surgeon called and said that Dad had done very well as they removed this blood from the brain, that he had a lot of fluid there, that if we had waited any longer, it would not have been good. But the complication was, as Dad was coming out of anesthesia, he had suffered a seizure. And that's not that common, but it does happen maybe on rare occasions. It's not something he had not seen before. It can happen, it's just unusual. And the seizure was a complicating factor. And so my dad went into ICU for a couple of days. And when you're on the road to recovery, it's usually not like a straight path. It's usually a bumpy road, with you go maybe 3 or 4 steps forward and you take a couple steps back. And that's kind of the way his recovery was over the next few days. But after a couple of days in ICU, he was able to come down to the step-down urology unit, and they were planning to send him to a at least 2-week rehabilitation center. But it ended up that he was able to get up and walk, even without a walker, which was a miracle. And so they let him come home with home health. He came home without having to go to this rehab facility, and he was able to get a couple of rehab sessions, and we were thinking that would last a number of weeks. But after 2 sessions, they said, we just don't need to come back. You are doing so great. So my dad has done very, very well. He is still on the road to recovery. Of course, he is not 100% by any means, but he's very close. But he is still having some pain in that area where they did the surgery. And so he is going back I think it's tomorrow, at least this week, he has a couple of different visits with surgeons and neurologists and things. You know how those visits are. They just line them up for you to go. And he'll be able to discuss any ongoing symptoms that he has with these professionals. And I just covet your prayers for Dad, that he would continue to recover and do better. And believe it or not, you know, when my parents walked into church yesterday morning, exactly 2 weeks after that emergency surgery, it was just hard to believe. I mean, it really is hard to believe that my dad is up and able to do that. So that is a praise, and we're very thankful. So that was like a Mother's Day present for all of us too, that we got to experience that. Another thing that went on with me is that since February, I have been rehearsing with the local Choral Society. You know, we rehearse, I think I told you, from like February to May, and then we usually sing a couple of concerts, and then we take the summer off, and then we rehearse from like the first part of September to maybe the first weekend in December, and we do a couple of concerts there. And so I'm a member of the local Choral Society, and I enjoy going and singing with people from our community. It's a whole lot of fun, and it really stretches me. It really does. Some of the music is quite challenging, but it's always fun to learn and grow and to do it with new friends and old friends and just to have a good time. So I was sad that my parents were not able to come to one of the concerts because they wanted to so much. However, my husband, of course, came, and then I looked out on that Sunday afternoon concert it was 1 week ago, just 1 week ago. It's hard to believe. It's just been a week. It seems so long ago. But I looked out Sunday a week ago, and there were my daughters. My twins had come to watch the concert. And so that was just a great experience for me. And when I was finished, they came up and they brought me flowers. And I wanted to show you, they brought me 2 big bundles of flowers, and I combined them all into this beautiful mason jar. And I just wanted to share my pretty flowers with you. And so they have been living in this jar for about a week now. I just kind of just put them in here, decorated them the best way I knew how, arranged them, I guess is the proper term. And then yesterday Saturday, I'm getting my days mixed up. Saturday, my sister-in-law, who was visiting from Tennessee for Mother's Day, she brought roses to the mothers in the family, and she let us pick out the colors we wanted, and I selected this pretty one. It has a lot of white on there with the pink tinged on it, and I thought this reminded me not only of Mother's Day but also my wedding anniversary. And so one of the traditions that I have on my wedding anniversary, am I dropping some leaves or petals, maybe a few? One of the traditions that I have on my wedding anniversary is I love to wear white. I think I've tried to wear white on every wedding anniversary that I've had. And so I jumped up Saturday morning, and we decided to run to breakfast before we headed out of town to go visit family. And while we were at breakfast, I spilled something on my white shirt. So naturally, I had to come home and change. But I did start out the day doing my tradition and wearing all white. And then another thing that happened is after church yesterday, we got home and we were scrambling. Our ideas were like, oh, what are we going to do for lunch? And my husband said, why don't we just run up to the Mexican restaurant real quick and have lunch? That would be a great thing to do. And so we did, and it was packed, but we got a table without waiting too long. And when we got ready to leave and my husband was paying the bill, they said, is your wife a mom? And he said, oh, yes, she's a mom of 4 and a grandmother of 11. And they said, well, we're giving the moms candy today. And so they gave me this pretty heart of candy. Now, I have a feeling that this might be something that they bought as a holdover from Valentine's Day, which is a wonderful idea. I mean, a wonderful idea, because even though this is a heart of candy, it's got roses on it or flowers, and it looks like it would be a perfect gift for Mother's Day. And the candy's good to the end of the year. So there you go. I'll show you what it looks like inside. I was surprised when I opened it. It looks like this. It's got little individually wrapped candies in there. This one is a dark chocolate, dark chocolate and sea salt. And it's got caramel in the middle. And then this gold one is, I think, a milk chocolate caramel here. So these candies are in there when I opened it up last night. I just had one last night, but it was really good. So I know that I will enjoy these, and I'll probably end up sharing these with a few grandkids that come along the way, because they're going to want to taste that, I'm sure. So that was another fun thing that happened over the weekend. Friends, it is great just to have a little Monday chat with you, to catch up like we used to do in the old days. I would love to be able to get back to a regular schedule of filming one of these days. I really would. Let's pray that it happens because I miss seeing you. I always have fun hearing from you, seeing your names pop up in the comments. You all have been so good to me, and I love you. Friends, I look forward, as always, to seeing you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.